Hey, folks, welcome back to More Than a Refresh conversations with the most interesting people you have never met. Today we have Pauline Vos, senior software engineer at MongoDB and international flag football athlete. Pauline, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. So, what would you like to talk about? I know we have of course, our little action item to do list, but I like to give our guests an opportunity to kind of promote their content.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to promote except my tendency to yap, which I'm sure you share.
Yes,
Uh,
I mean, that's the point of the podcast, right?
that is
Let's
the
yap
point of
together.
the. Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
before let's start with the interesting part of this because we can nerd and geek out for hours, but the interesting part of
Hmm.
this is the international flag football athlete. And before we started recording, you had mentioned that previously you were actually in tackle,
Yeah.
and we had a moment of cohesion on the physical part of. There's a point where that no longer is fun.
No.
And you
Well,
said
it's
that was
still fun, but
but well, still fun, but still not necessarily. You don't recover quite as fast.
yeah, no. I actually had a teammate who was 45, I believe, when she quit because her physiotherapist told her that if you still want to walk by 50, you should probably stop now. So,
Uh, That's a fair equation. If you'd like to
yeah,
walk, stop.
yeah,
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, outside of golf, and I know that's really a remarkable sport, but and in fact, I haven't even played that in years. I gave up sports years ago. And maybe I shouldn't have, but it started to hurt. And,
mm,
I have enough pain every day from everything else. I don't need to be hit by some 230-pound man with a ball, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
All right,
yeah, yes.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna say because like for me, I was a linebacker for a very long time. So I played since I was 16. I started at 16, so I've been involved in football for like over 20 years now. But at some point I started, especially after giving birth, I gained some weight. And then I noticed these pains and aches that you mentioned, especially like in my
Mhm.
knees and stuff. And so I quit tackle football for this reason and then thought, oh, let me transition to flag football. But then I want to take it super seriously. So I started working out and like doing strength training and losing lots of weight and the pain disappeared. And then I was like,
Yes.
I want to try tackle again. Like,
No, don't do that. Don't do that. But especially
I might.
for the smarter, more brilliant sex of us, I mean, your bodies change quite a bit during
Mm,
pregnancy and after birth
yeah.
and things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, men, we just kind of get older and fatter and balder, you know, just over time, slowly. I mean, but you guys have inrushes of very. I mean, everything from your hips getting wider to, and I'm not talking about weight. I'm talking about actual bone
Yeah, like
structure.
the integrity of your pelvic
Yeah,
floor and that sort of.
all kinds of things change. Well, congratulations on being a mother. I did
Thank
not
you.
know that little factoid about you. All right, well, it's interesting. You work for, when it comes to the quote unquote market, we are ideologically opposed in terms of relational versus non-relational, but it's all data, right? And it's just a matter I mean, real in reality, it's just how you manage that data. But
Mhm.
you recently got involved in open source AI, as I understand.
Yeah, and, much to my chagrin, to be honest, like, it wasn't necessarily a choice, but, that's, where a lot of, especially these bigger tech companies are positioning themselves, right? Especially in the data space, because, if you want to remain relevant in that space, then you basically almost have no choice but to try and be present in that space. And a lot of development now in frameworks and in libraries and stuff is focused on either like AI coding agents, like MCP servers and things like that, or like semantic search. So being like a data store, our niche that we're positioning ourselves and is in this semantic search with like the vector embeddings. And so basically, yeah, my title is senior software engineer, but it's more like open source software engineer, where we take care of the open source ecosystem around the product itself. And so much of our job is identifying where we can kind of shoehorn ourselves into so that people start using our product, right? Because if you're not present there, then as one of the options.
That's interesting. And I should say what's interesting. The interesting is the staying relevant comment you made. And I would challenge that. And I would challenge that because while, yes, AI, which doesn't actually exist, is a great
True.
marketing term, right? It's a great marketing term. It's just like
Mhm.
cloud, which cloud is nothing new. It's been around really, I mean, ever since the beginning of multi-tenant systems, right?
Mm.
Which is the 70s. It just kind of evolved. And frankly, the cloud today is not that much different than the cloud of 98. I mean, it just really isn't. I mean, and um, it's just
It's just
a little.
easier to scale, I guess. That's like
Well,
the main
yeah, but
thing.
that's not a functionality of the cloud.
No.
That's a functionality of faster hardware, faster
Yeah.
network interconnect, things like that, right? It's just the evolution and the maturing of the technology itself. I mean, I remember, I mean, literally when 10 megabit was, oh my God, this is so fast,
Mhm.
right? And now, I mean, that's not even an earmark for what speed is. But back to the relevancy. I would agree with a couple of caveats. If your goal is to pretend you're important to private equity or investors who don't actually understand technology, but want the new fancy thing to drive up stock price so they can make money, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely, that's how
Yeah,
you
I
stay
mean, that is
relevant.
what it is. That is what it is, yeah.
Um, but command prompt with my own company, which has been around since 97, we are doing just fine. And you
Mhm.
don't see things like embrace AI and Postgres on our website.
Mm.
So, and you never, and when Kubernetes came out, you didn't see embrace, containers and always on and micro whatever with Kubernetes and Postgres. You didn't see that either. Right. We play, and that doesn't mean we don't utilize the technologies. We do. But our customers actually value credibility, experience, expertise over, oh, they're the new flash in the pan. And
Yeah,
it's just
to
a
be fair, I
different.
don't think they're, mutually exclusive because I
I
do think
agree.
we also focus very much on credibility, especially since, like, historically, MongoDB obviously when it first was released was this big hype beast, but
Right.
there was still some immaturity and like some security scares and that sort of stuff. So it's like obviously credibility is also a big thing that you want to focus on, especially
So,
because you're this corporate like behemoth and
yeah,
public
please don't
company.
misunderstand. I actually wasn't knocking MongoDB specifically. I actually would agree with you that. Well, I'd agree with exactly what you just said. Is when MongoDB came out. I mean, look. Let me just be honest. I mean, it's just who I am. When MongoDB came out, it was a joke. It was a hyped up joke. Now, absolutely, it is I think a very reasonable solution to many problems. And I think I think you do a lot of things really, really well. And I don't think it was Mongo's fault, right? I think what happened, and you see this with other things. I mean, I don't know, and I don't mean any disrespect. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the term web scale.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So,
MongoDB is what I was, yeah,
well,
that
yeah,
meme.
but yeah, okay. So that I don't think that's MongoDB's fault, right? I think people like it's kind of like when you get that one influencer on Instagram that goes from 2,000 to 2 million followers in 6 months, right? I think it was like deer in the headlights. Like, we have a great idea. Give us a second to get our feet
Yeah.
underneath us, right? So
Honestly,
I'm
this is
not.
still something that we share internally.
Oh,
'Cause it's
really?
funny. Yeah, 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 it's like we have stickers and stuff, like, they're not, like, official stickers that we're supposed to be handing out at conferences and stuff, but, like,
Right.
Yeah, like the little bear from the
That right.
video.
Well, it's years ago, pre-pandemic by far, back when web scale was still a term. I was asked to come speak at a Postgres conference that is, a part of Southern California Linux Expo. And the guy that called me, and I won't give away his name, but, the guy that called me is like, "JD, I need speakers. Will you come speak?" And I said, "Sure. What do you want me to speak on?" And he said, I don't care. Just submit it. I need it." And I said, "Okay, fine." And my title was
Uh-oh.
yeah, exactly. My title was "Suck It. Web Scale is Dead. Postgres is King."
Mm,
Okay. And there's actually a lot of funny things about that term because
that's so clickbait.
and you know what? This is how I know clickbait works, regardless of social media and everything else. I had standing room only in that talk, and when I left, half the room followed me to keep talking, right? That's how
Mm,
clickbait that title was. But the funny thing is that 6 months later, or not even 6 months, like 3 months later, I gave that same talk at PostgresConf in Brooklyn, and one of the sponsors was Nutanix, which is like
don't
they
know.
well, so Nutanix is actually supposedly who coined that term, web scale,
Oh, okay. Okay.
right? And they're a
Oh,
sponsor, and
Google.
on the program is that talk, and it was a crazy anyway. It was a long time ago, but it was
I'm
funny.
trying to Google this at the same time, which is
No, that's
very
all right. Yeah,
not done, but
who created the term web scale? I believe it was
Newtonic.
Nutanix.
New wait. New like NEU
It's Nutanix.
NUTA. Oh, Nutanix. Ah, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Now,
A
according
leader in hybrid multi-cloud computing.
they've been around a long time. They're pretty big. I don't know if they're as big as Mongo, but in my world, they're pretty big. They work with Enterprise DB, their partners, and they kind of have like a VMware competitor kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay.
I never run into them in the market, but supposedly they do pretty well. Anyway, so with this open source I actually let's pull back a minute because we could talk about that and the algorithm will pick it up and all that stuff. But what about hacktivism? Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell me what your goals are there, your experiences there, what you wish you could do.
I mean, to be honest, I feel a little bit like the hacktivism of yore is kind of dead.
You think
Like,
so?
yeah, because it's so niche now, and I feel like all the hacktivists from back then have gotten calmer, older. A lot of them work for governments now, which is interesting. I know a few personally actually who got hired by the Dutch government because I worked with them also.
Mm,
And they're still like hackers, but they're not like hacktivists anymore. And it's also quite funny that like you had this sort of, like in 2008 when you had like the Scientology protests and stuff, the anonymous thing that kind of
hmm
like, spawned anonymous and like made that mainstream. And then people started hearing about the term hacktivism, which was kind of, and they all had this like sort of inaccurate concept of what anonymous was, which is just you go on the internet and you say you're anonymous and then you do some stuff and then
right.
they really thought it was like, they really still think, I think, that it's like an organized group with like a leader or whatever. And now like the only thing I ever see about hacktivism anymore is things like, oh, where's anonymous when you need him? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, like those guys, they weren't a cohesive group. And
I think
Anonymous
so no, they weren't. And they never, and generally, I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but generally speaking,
yeah.
none of these groups are cohesive groups. But the great thing about the press is they always need an enemy, right?
Mhm.
They have to create the illusion of this danger. Otherwise, they can't sell advertising.
Yeah.
And they do it. I mean, they do it with. And I'm not trying to be political, but they do it with the Trump administration. They do it with the Biden administration. They do it. I mean, it just doesn't matter what it is, right? It
Yeah.
basically, the idea. I mean, sure, they do have an ideological bent depending on the network,
On the
quote unquote.
publication. Yeah,
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 on the
exactly.
publication, but they're all doing the same thing, and they're all just lying
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
And so, and they do that on purpose because if you get a lot of people together who don't actually understand what's going on, and perhaps can't understand, that's an important line. It's real easy to manipulate them into getting what you want.
Mm.
And so there was this big bad, and we did have, I mean, for example, oh, good Lord, what was the guy that released a bunch of stuff? He's now a Russian citizen. He was the US guy.
Oh, Snowden.
Snowden, yeah. So we
Yeah.
had Snowden, and that was I mean, that wasn't really hacktivism per se, but still, I mean, we released all that information, and you could see that, right? You saw one side was he's a hero,
Yeah.
right? And one side was he's a villain. And the reality is that it's really somewhere in between with a lot of
Yeah.
gray area,
Yeah, but
right?
also there's no way for you to know because this is like a parasocial thing, right? Like
Right.
you might think you're getting all the information but when it's different than being actually in actual proximity to someone in life, and you know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
only getting like a filtered view of who this person is supposed to be.
Well, agreed. And, this is an individual that believes so deeply in the idea of the United States that he actually released this information, which this relate. Now, here's the gray area. One, the information probably shouldn't have been released. But
Mhm.
two, it is information that absolutely needed to be understood that is actually happening and is in
Yeah.
direct opposition to the ideal of
Yeah.
America, right? And so, and he believed in it so deeply, he was willing to basically give up his entire life and move to Russia of all places, right? And
Yeah, I find that really interesting because Russia to a lot of people uh is kind of a savior state, but it really depends on like who you're aligned with. But
oh,
I guess that's the same for the US, I suppose. Like it's
well,
the same
but
for
not to the same degree, right? Because I'm not aligned with our current administration, and I wasn't aligned with our
yeah,
past administration, and I am doing just fine.
yeah,
Right? Whereas in his situation, he is probably treated very well because it was a political coup for
yeah,
him to become
yeah,
a Russian citizen.
yeah,
But I mean, in comparison to all the young men they're killing by attacking Ukraine,
yeah.
right? So it's not a savior state. That not at all. What is it? I mean, without giving away anything important, or I shouldn't say important, but dangerous, I guess. What is something in hacktivism that you've participated with that you believe has brought about good?
I honestly, if I'm gonna be super candid, I haven't really participated in any hacktivism at all. I've been like, well, I wouldn't say at all, because I was an active participant in the Operation Chanology and all that, like the Scientology stuff, but I wasn't
Mhm.
hacking at the time. I was just like organizing the protests and like making flyers and things like that. But I wasn't involved in the hacktivism space in any way, shape, or form. It's just a special interest of mine, and I think also, like, from knowing a lot of, like, hackers and, like, going to, hacker camps and stuff, it's more of a hobby and an interest and a thing that I like to think about, also in terms of politics because it's so adjacent to, like, punk and DIY culture, which I also find very interesting. But I've never been a participant in any, like, hacker groups that would, like, try to hack a nation state for good or something like that. No, I'm not taking any type of
No,
credit for
well,
anything like that.
and let's be honest, you wouldn't tell me if you were.
No,
But
it'd be very mysterious. No, I'm
yeah.
also 100% not low key enough to be doing this. I always say, like, my digital footprint is like clown shoe
Clown shoe.
size. So I would not be a good hacker in that
You're not
respect.
riding the undercurrents of Tor.
If I were to do that, I would be really putting myself in danger, I think, because I would be so easy to track.
Sure.
So
Well, okay, so let's abstract it out. It's something you're very interested in the Scientology portion of that. You were, organizing protest flyers. Those are all important because transparency, especially like you mentioned in politics, transparency is of the utmost importance.
those are
Um,
very interesting stories also. There are some hacktivism stories from that time I could tell, actually.
okay,
That might be. And some are more funny than others, but I think a really big conversation here was with this internet provider called Access for All.
okay, yeah, I
Mm,
remember them.
yeah, so it was like, and they were an internet provider, but they kind of had this like ideological stance. So like you can host, it's like a freedom of speech type thing.
Sure.
You can, or like freedom of press almost, like you can host and publish anything on our anything that's legal basically on our infrastructure, and we are not going to censor it just because like someone with a big stack of money waves said stack of money in our face and says
Hmm.
please remove this content from the web. And there was this woman who I forget her name, but she had been a member of the Church of Scientology. I think she's called Karen someone, I can't remember. But in any case, she had left and then had started like posting all of this like criticism of the quote unquote church.
It's a cult. Let's be clear.
Yeah, it's I mean, and
It's not a church. It's a cult.
it's a cult based on like self-help books, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what it is. Come at me, like come sue me.
Come at
No,
me,
but
bro. No, but
yeah,
that's what it
yeah.
is. I mean, I look, I not to interject, but we
Go ahead.
should. There is a level of fairness we should have here. The Church of Scientology has helped a lot of people, whether you agree. It has, and now, granted, in their own interest. Okay,
Yeah, it's to
but there
sell
are people.
self-help
I'll give you
books.
an example. There was an interview. This was years ago, many years ago, with John Travolta, who is a well-known
Mm-hmm.
Scientologist.
Mm-hmm.
And he point blank said, he says, look, you can come at the Church of Scientology all you want, but let me tell you, this is my perspective. My perspective is because remember, he came up and he was really big in the 80s, early 90s, late 70s or 80s and early 90s. He said during the 80s, when everybody was doing hookers and blow, the church kept me out of that. Right? That's not a low bar if you are from that era in his industry.
I
That
get
was
that.
Go ahead.
However, there
Yeah,
is a
no,
big
this is what I was hoping for was the however.
okay. However, there is, especially in the Church of Scientology, there is a big gap between the experience of these celebrity members of the Church of Scientology, which are specifically recruited to be
Correct.
mouthpieces of the Church of Scientology. So they have like the celebrity recruitment center in California specifically to recruit these people. And they have a very different experience in the church because they're shielded from a lot of experiences that non-celebrities have because they know that it's a PR thing,
Sure.
right? Like if a
Yeah.
John Travolta goes in interviews and say, I'm having a grand old time, then it's like a good look. But there are also people who are essentially enslaved and doing forced labor on like
Yep.
ships and shit.
Well,
And
I was gonna ask you, do you know about the Scientology ship? Um,
they
isn't
have like
there
a navy, like a little tiny navy. Like they have their own
yeah, the
like
free winds. It's interesting. You're I mean, wow, we could really get into this. Um and really you can get into this about lots of religions. Bill Maher actually kind of makes a funny post about or a comment about this. It's like, look, Judaism and Christianity and Islam, they get a pass because they're thousands of years old. But if your religion came out in 1974,
hmm,
or
by
whatever
a
it was,
science fiction author.
yeah, by a science fiction author, who if you the what I love about it is a science fiction, basically an author who wrote some entertaining books. Let me be fair. I've read a couple of them, Battle Earth and things like that. Um, and I found out after the fact that the doctrine of Scientology
It was
is
written by
these
him.
books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
not that they were written by him, but they follow like Battlefield Earth or whatever it's called is
'Cause they
right.
have,
I
like,
mean,
the thetans and the volcanoes and stuff, like
yeah.
the Oh, wow, I didn't actually know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I knew
yeah.
the
Well,
thetan level
that
wasn't.
was the whole thing when they did with Forrest Whitaker and John Travolta when they did that movie Battlefield Earth,
Mm,
which was I think to this day still rated like one of the top 5 worst movies ever.
I can believe that,
Um,
yeah.
it is. I mean, that was John Travolta's whole thing. Well, it's because it's for the church and da 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 da. And I mean, and
Mm,
obviously it was quote unquote science fiction, but there is a basis of it. I mean, same with Battlestar Galactica,
but
right?
that's not one of the top 5 worst
No,
things.
no, it's not. I mean, they
I
actually did
was
a
like,
good
"Wait,
job,
where's
but
this
it's
coming?"
it's
It's like, "Hold up."
oh, so okay, so continue on your story though with this.
Oh, yeah, and then I'll circle back to the Catholic Church, actually, because you said something that reminded me of an old, career path I took. Anyway,
Sure.
yeah, so this lady, obviously, like, she had defected is the word, I guess? Like, left the
Yeah,
I
left.
don't yeah, I don't know, but, yeah, I thought there was, like, a specific word in English, but, English is not my native language, just FYI to the
I wouldn't even
viewer.
really. What is it? Your native
Dutch,
language? Oh, I didn't
Dutch.
know that. That's
Oh,
new.
oh, okay,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, you have no accent.
uh, I have it, like, when I'm tired and, like, with certain words, you'll start now you'll probably start
Yeah,
picking
now I'll start
bits up.
noticing.
Yeah, exactly. So this lady had left the church and started started publishing all these and obviously the Church of Scientology came after her and tried to sue her and tried to sue Access for All to take her down requests and stuff. And so she was there. There was and she ended up Access for All ended up like paying all the lawyer costs and like defending her right essentially to stay published on their infrastructure, and they won in the end, which was a big loss for them. But there was a bunch of other people like that had left the church that were there, like holding up signs. Like one lady was like, I am 40K in debt because I left the church, and they went after me. Yeah, so they definitely have a tendency, and this is also part of like their playbook, which I'm talking about a specific book of guidelines on how to handle people outside the church. So either people who left the church or other people who've never been in the church but are critical. And part of it is like suing the hell out of them so that they just go bankrupt because they have so much money collectively that
Right.
they could just, even if they don't have a case, like they can just throw so much.
Well, they have lawyers on staff, right? It doesn't cost anything to file a suit and show up.
Exactly. So and for their victims, it does. So they can go into super deep shit for it, and for them, so it's very effective. And then there's also this thing called bull baiting, which we experienced. So bull baiting is this thing where you basically, it's also litigious kind of in nature, is that if you have these protests or someone who is physically at a location criticizing the Church of Scientology, you send a couple people out and you just harass them without being violent, but you get in their face and you just like kind of you bait them into
Hmm.
basically starting a physical altercation, and then you can sue them. And
Right.
basically you take them down in that way. So they attempted that a whole bunch of times at these protests where we were at. Like they had like this guy following us around with the telelens. They had like a guy like trying to like bait us into starting something. But we were all prepared because their book had of guidelines had, I forget what it was called, but it had leaked because a lot of their documents were leaking at the time
Hmm.
and like just spread around all of these image boards that were organizing these protests. So we all knew like the bull baiting strategy was like a thing that they do. But there was something like pretty scary. So like I said, there was this guy with this big ass telelens on his camera that would follow us around, like even follow us back to Central Station on our way back from the protest and things like that. And there was this one guy who was very prominent in organizing. He was a black guy, so he was, like, one of the few black guys that was, like, consistently at the protests, and he was a big part of the organization. But on his, like, online he had, like, this Dutch social media website profile, and as a joke, he had put a picture of Marvin Gaye as his avatar, and the Church of Scientology had recognized him from, like, the IRC chats and stuff as one of the main organizers, and so one day we showed up, and there were, like, people from the Church of Scientology handing out brochures to passersby, like, slandering us and stuff like that, and they had this picture of Marvin Gaye saying, "This is the leader of Anonymous." I am not joking. This is the leader
So
of
the
Anonymous, and it was a
picture
picture of
of
Marvin Gaye.
a brilliant songwriter and singer who was killed by his father because of his illicit lyrics.
Yeah, I
That was
forgot
the
about
leader.
that, actually. I totally
Yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah, so the
So
whole thing with
tragic.
Marvin Gaye, and not dissimilar to Prince, actually, if you look into some of Prince's history, although obviously Prince lived a lot longer.
Mm,
He grew up evangelical,
mm,
and started singing the soul, the blues and R&B, and a lot of his music was very, let's get it on, that
yeah.
kind of thing. Which men, if you're not able to get your woman to pay attention to you, turn that song on. But
Good tip.
um, basically what happened is I don't remember the exact details, but he was living with his father at the time or something like that, and he was in recovery or trying to recover from some drugs or alcohol and something. And his father, and this is, I remember, it was a minister or a priest or something, and just like lost it and killed
Mm,
him.
mhm.
It was a very tragic story for a brilliant artist. But anyway, back on point, it's interesting. You run into this a lot. For the Church of Scientology to be successful, you have to be able to indoctrinate one of two types of people. Okay, it's really only one of two for the majority of it, right? Obviously, when you got your Tom Cruises and your Will Smiths and your John Travoltas, and that's a
The
smart strategy.
spokespeople.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spokespeople. Well, but famous spokespeople, right?
Mhm.
People that will arbitrarily look up to them just because they're famous.
Yeah.
Never, not to, it doesn't matter that Will Smith is a prick, right? He's
Mhm.
famous.
Mhm.
Um, the so the two types of people that are frankly, not very, they're just not that intelligent, and they're looking for guidance, or two, victims.
Mhm.
Right. That's the only way the Church of Scientology succeeds is you have people who are in a situation where they are desperate for it's one of those two types of people, and they're desperate for absolution or resolution or whatever you want to call it. Hope.
Yeah, there's a lot of that because they do these stress tests
Yep.
to lure you in basically to, like, ascertain where your psychological problems or your trauma might be because it's kind of like a rudimentary lie detector test. So they
Right.
ask you a bunch of questions about your life and like see if anything like spikes your tension. And then it's like, we've got just the book for that.
That's
And
right.
then
This
yeah,
is how we'll help you.
yeah.
Yeah, and look, if you're watching this and you're part of the Church of Scientology and you're like, I can't believe, good for you if you have a good life. But, the reality is you were suckered, right?
Mm,
And I'm sorry for whatever it was in your life that, brought you to that point. But, I was just having this conversation with my wife today. In general, life is bullshit. The moment you accept that, you can move forward. Bad
mm,
things happen to everybody,
mm-hmm,
right? And there is no true scale, right? I mean, just because there are people that have had what we would consider horrendous things happen to them who have overcome. And
mm-hmm,
there are people that have had relatively minor things in our mind happen to them who have not been able to overcome,
mm-hmm.
right? It's all about the impact of the individual. So then, really it's important that the moment you recognize that, it's like, okay, maybe I can get help that's positive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I'm not even convinced that they can't offer positive help, but in the same way that like a psychologist would be able to maybe offer positive help for a fee. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The difference is just that one is like transparently a paid service and the other one slams that whole industry because they would like to covertly take that fee and do the
Yeah,
same,
actually,
but under the guise of religion.
that's a good insight, in that because like they're antidepressant, for example.
Yeah.
And while that's actually one thing that I think that they actually get right is that, antidepressants are way overprescribed, and they do
In the
have
US, I would say,
and
though. In the
yeah,
US.
well, I can only speak from the US, right?
Yeah,
I mean
here it's a very different it's a very different climate, um, because we're less privatized, so we don't
right.
have the same sort of incentives to, prescribe them to people. So there's a much higher boundary for people to get antidepressants prescribed here versus in the US, and that's yeah.
Well, and on that note, and I do wanna get back to you were gonna bring up something about the Catholic Church, but I did wanna address this on that note. One of the most interesting things about depression, and depressants and all of that, let me be very clear, there are people that need this medicine. Hands
Mhm,
down, there are people that
mhm.
need this medicine to be able to function, there is no question. I would easily argue that 95% of the people on them don't. What they need is exercise. What they need is a good diet. What they need is a supportive community, right? And
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean, so
that's the
this really
Scientology.
this depends on your policy, though, because for us, the policy is more that it's like if you are suicidal and, and also often it comes combined with, for instance, cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's not like, it's like it's more seen as like an emergency solution to a dire situation. However, you still need to treat the root cause because also you're going to otherwise cultivate a dependency. Now, if there's like a financial uh, benefit for if there's like financial gain from having people have this dependency on this medication, then you're not going to offer like a long-term solution by like combining treatments and
Well,
stuff.
no, and you're not wrong. So if we're getting into the policy of things, that gets a little bit more complicated. And the reason it gets complicated is that there are very few, they do exist, but there are very few antidepressants today that are not generic, right?
Mm,
You're not making significant money off of them. I think where you may and now, granted, let's say Prozac, right? When it first came out, right? Absolutely, there was huge amounts of money to be made. Um, but no, without even getting it, first off, you're not wrong. I think that there should not be a significant financial incentive for the health of your society. Period.
yeah.
Okay. Do I think there should be some? Yes. I mean, people have to make money. You got to pay taxes. You got to keep society
Hmm.
moving forward. But the idea that a company will make hundreds of billions of dollars off of a pill and incentivize doctors either under the table or not to
That's the one.
prescribe that
Yeah.
pill. I mean, it should be a violently criminal offense. I mean, felony out the door. If a doctor is found receiving compensation for advice
Yeah.
or biased advice, I should say, it's a felony. You lose your license. You go work at a gas station, petrol station. Um, but the United States. I keep forgetting you're in Europe. We could have had such a fascinating conversation beyond what we're already talking about. The United States is such a weird paradigm of solutions and problems because we
Mm,
have a lot of really cool stuff like our research on artificial joints and things like that is second to none.
mm.
Our cancer research is amazing, of course, with the caveat that they're hoping to make drugs to sell
Yeah.
right, for that research. So
Which
it,
is why it's so amazing because that's
it,
the incentive for yeah.
yeah, so it's like this yin and yang type of
Yeah. Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, and this is regardless of the insanity of some of our current administration. The other hand of this is that we are finally waking up to the idea that, wait a minute, my primary care physician doesn't know anything about nutrition,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I mean,
we're
the
wake
Maha movement, there
yeah, the Maha movement, although there are downsides to it, there's a lot of really good
the
stuff in there.
core the core of it, a lot of like the but I feel this about a lot of like so-called like conspiracy theory types. There's always like varying in size of the nugget, but there always is like a nugget of truth. It's just
Yes,
that then people go absolutely wild with it. But I'm a big proponent of like good nutrition and because I mean, I'm an athlete,
right.
so you just know, like you just know what a big difference it makes, especially having gone through like periods where I was a lot heavier and a lot more sedentary and didn't eat like the difference in just contentedness in life and just general happiness and is massive, massive.
Well, there's and I agree with you 100%. Like, so one of the, personally, uh, one of the issues that I bring up a lot to people is that I used to be a huge backpacker and hiker.
Mm,
Huge. I mean, like every weekend.
mhm,
And now I can't because I need an ankle.
mm,
And that's been huge. That's been a huge impact on my mental health at times.
yeah, yeah.
But no, you're right. The best conspiracy theory in the world has a rock solid foundation of truth that has been manipulated and blown up.
Mhm.
Right. So let's come back. You're going to bring up something about the Catholic Church. They're relatively easy to beat on, but it's kind of fun. So what do we got?
Yeah. So I actually at some point worked for the Catholic Church for a bit,
Okay.
despite one thing to note is that my country, the Netherlands, is more than half of us are atheists.
Okay.
So it's like the norm, and then like the largest religion would be Christianity, which would be like evangelical or Catholic, and
Hmm.
then after that it's Islam, and there's also like a pretty sizable portion of Jewish people, I think, but most of us by far are secular atheist, however you want to call it. But yeah, so I moved to Australia at some point and I was looking for jobs. This was before I was a software engineer professionally. I was already doing it,
Hmm.
but which also at the Catholic Church actually, and they gave me half a day off for writing a script that did like the job I was supposed to be doing all day. And then I was just like, I ran the script, and they were like, "Okay, we're gonna pay you for the full day. You can." And I was like,
Well,
"Yes,
that's
I love
cool. That's
software."
not a bad perk.
It was so fun. Like I was like, "Yes," it just solidified for me that I was like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to be doing software." Um, but in any case, this was like 2013 or something. I lived in Australia, and through this like what do you call it? Like they they send you out
Oh, oh,
like an agency.
yeah. Well, you're evangelizing, is what you're doing.
No, no, no. I mean, like, it's like a job agency, and they deploy you to like different jobs.
Oh, a temp worker. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
they.
I was a
Yeah.
temp worker. That's not the word I was up, but yeah, I was a temp worker through this agency, and they were like, "Yeah, you can work at the Catholic Church." It was like reception work and like admin and assistant work, and it was like $25 an hour. I had no experience, so I was like, "All right, sweet, let's do it." And basically, like the rundown I got was like, "Look, we don't care that you're Catholic. But, my like, people calling in might care that you're Catholic because there are, like, constituents or whatever they're
Sure.
called,
Congregants.
eh congregants, yeah, like, I'm so, like,
Constituents. That would be
religious that,
like
like
Republican, Democrat, that kind of thing.
yeah, but honestly, it's, like, it's not far off for me because it was working for the archdiocese, which is kind of, like it felt to me like it was kind of an invisible layer over society because it wasn't, like, a church. It was they had city infrastructure and my
Do a
job was, like,
business.
yeah, they're, like, one of the biggest businesses in the world. It's, like, seeing that they're, like, this big money-making machine, this archdiocese had these parishes under them, and they owned, hospitals, schools, just houses that they're renting out, and then the tenants might not even know it belongs to the Catholic Church, all this
Right.
stuff. And they had handbooks for everything. So they basically said, like, if people ask you if you're Catholic, or just like kind of like play along. And also, there was this royal inquiry at the time, which was throughout the Commonwealth. So, like the British, like Commonwealth, like Canada, Australia, India,
Hmm.
there was this royal um, investigation into child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, and this was like very high profile at the time, is just blowing up. And so basically, we had a handbook for that because our archdiocese at the time had not been implicated.
Or
A
like
few
a
years
nice
later,
little slip in at the time.
at the time, yeah, I mean, it's no secret that like like something like 5, 6 years later, I saw an article come out, and it was like the archbishop that like I was working for at the time was implicated, and it was like gross. It was as gross as like all the other cases that had come out, but obviously they're all protecting themselves and each other. And we had this handbook of like, we even had a panic door. Like we had like a sliding door, but it was like a double door. So I was instructed at reception, like if someone comes in and they seem unstable, because obviously they might be like traumatized by the
Right.
church, you can hit this button and then the second door will close and all this stuff. And like, oh, if people call in and they're calling in about like child sexual abuse, just redirect them to like the family center where we can help them. And so it was very like they had policies to keep things kind of contained, like do like the damage control. And it was just very interesting to see how well oiled that machine was in every way, shape, or form.
So what what I think a lot of people don't know, uh, um, especially those that aren't actually educated in Christianity, which would be the majority of the United States, um, is that the Catholic Church, they didn't found Christianity, okay, obviously, but they cemented it as a doctrine in around, I think it was 249 AD, which was, 100 or 210 years after Christ died.
Mhm.
Um, and they cemented it into basically to create a foundation for or modern Western society. And they were successful with that. But part of their doctrine is that they are above states and countries, which
Mhm.
is why they don't report. Even though that's actually, if you read the Bible, it's the Bible. So biblically, that's not actually true. The Christianity or the church is not above government. In fact, the Bible even says that you should follow your government and things like that. But that's why they don't report, right? That's
Mhm.
why they wouldn't report the abuse. It's not necessarily. I'm not saying this is true for everybody, or all of the archdioceses or whatever. I'm not saying that they were trying to quote unquote cover it up, as much as their doctrine states they are above the local government and
Mhm.
therefore, right? And why this is particularly interesting in the United States, we would be like, you know what? Absolutely not. Because we had, the Puritans and the Protestants and all of that that came over because of what the Catholic Church was doing, as well as the Anglican Church. Because with the Anglican Church, you have a situation where, I mean, the whole reason the Church of England exists was because a king wanted to get a divorce, which the Catholics wouldn't give him,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So anyway, I am not making excuses for the Catholic Church. I mean, they absolutely should be subject to all local laws. But it isn't, especially in Europe, it's kind of an interesting situation because Europe kind of owes its entire modern existence to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, for better or for worse, and that would be
Okay.
bad.
What? What a monumental pain in the butt all at once. Between losing my earbuds, not being able to repair, my dog screaming at the door to go out. I had
I
to
feel like
read.
maybe the Catholic Church or God,
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
intervened in this
That's
they're
right.
like, "Stop talking about it." us. And do you see how the Church of Scientology did not have that divine power to do the
That's
same
exactly
thing?
right. They don't. And that's because, atheists or not, the Catholic Church came about when superstition and or spirituality actually existed.
Mm.
The 1970s or 60s or when was the Church of Scientology found? That was actually
I
really
think the 70s. I think it was the
Church
70s.
of Scientology.
Like, in my head, it's like 1974 for some reason,
Well,
but I might be
yeah,
wrong.
that's 1954.
54. Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's very different.
So, I mean, not that that gives it any more credibility. It's still a cult, right? It's just ridiculous that I feel for people. All right. So you were talking about working about how, I mean, they had whole policies, and you're right. The Catholic Church, I mean, they are a massive enterprise,
Mhm.
largest real estate owner in the world.
Mhm.
It's why the Chinese, for example, and I'm not knocking the Chinese, but it's why China tries to block the spread of Christianity. Because
Mm.
in China, you don't really own anything. I mean, it's weird now. It's not as bad as it was, but basically, it's the state that is the church.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of political scientists and stuff would say, no, 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 it's the state. It's of the people and production for the people, and that's no different than what the Catholic Church was 100 years ago. Right. It's all religion. It's just what label you put on it. If you will only vote Democrat or you will only vote Republican, that is your religion. Right.
Yeah, I
If
agree, and I also don't think it's, like, black and white because I also think that, like, for instance, the Chinese government, the way they do things, there are some advantages to
Yes.
their system
Yes, there
also,
is.
but there's also obviously very valid criticisms, and, what I find interesting about, like, these times right now is that there can be no two truths at the same time. Like, for instance, take I know you keep saying, like, without getting too political. I'm not like that. I do not shy away from
All
politics.
right, let's
But
do it. Bring it
For
on.
instance, Iran, there's a lot of people who are, pro-Palestinian and pro a free Palestine, as am I, um, who, who disagree with overthrowing the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Okay.
Uh to me, it's like, okay, we can acknowledge that they align with Palestinians, but are also extremely oppressive as a government. But
Yes.
we can also agree that maybe the solution to that isn't to bomb civilians, and we can also acknowledge that when they target things, like, so they've been bombing and targeting a lot of things outside of Iran as well, right? Like in Tel Aviv and things like that,
Yeah.
and also in
Everywhere. Yeah.
but the targets are infrastructure. They're like electrical things. So it's like we can acknowledge there can be two truths at the same time, right? Like we can acknowledge that the Islamic Republic of Iran is something that we shouldn't want for their people, but then also maybe the solution isn't to bomb civilians. Like I
Okay.
I just
Okay.
find it so strange that you can't say one thing without automatically aligning yourself to everything else. It's just so silly, and people are
Well,
losing their
now
minds.
I would agree with you, but let me have an addendum to your point.
Mhm.
They recently had countrywide protests where they killed over 31,000 of their own people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They are the number one financial supporter of terrorism in the world.
Mhm.
Um, Now, should we bomb citizens? Absolutely not. In fact, uh, that is never the goal. Shit happens. Okay. Let me be very clear. I don't think we should have bombed Iran. Let me be very clear. That's not the point I'm making here. But the moment it was a committed act, we have to recognize, as your point, there are two truths. Shit happens. And sometimes there are what are called casualties of war. And those aren't soldiers. Those are the side effects, right? Unfortunately, civilians. It's interesting you brought up Iran because it really is such a firebrand right now. Uh, and let's talk about conspiracies. I believe that right now, not in general, but right now, the timing of the bombing of Iran was very simple. The Epstein files are out. Period. Right? All of a sudden, it is being realized that lots of very important people are little girl fuckers.
Uh-huh.
And they're trying to distract from that.
There was an
Now,
actual email saying exactly that as
yeah,
well, right? That
it's
saying exactly that, like, in these words, he would probably start a war if he was cornered because he's the type of guy. This is, I think it was Epstein himself who said this to someone else about Trump, saying, if this guy is cornered to protect himself, he will take down everyone else.
yes. And I
That's
believe that to be
literally what it
true. I mean,
said.
Trump is the
Me
ultimate
too.
narcissist. But now
Yeah,
here's the interesting thing. I didn't vote for him. Let me be very clear before I get railed. I didn't vote for him. I also didn't vote for Biden. No, that does not make me the enemy. And no, it's not my fault that Trump is in office. It's the Democrats' fault that Trump is in office because they did such a
I agree.
terrible job.
I agree.
Yeah, we think about that. America was so desperate to get away from the Democratic platform, they voted for Trump again.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was here. So cut us some slack. It's been a rough few years. That being said, there are, when we talk about our current administration, Trump and Epstein, the relationship there, whether or not is Trump a porn star doer? Absolutely. I mean, that's documented. We know
Mhm.
that. Is he a philanderer? Yes, absolutely documented. We know that. There is currently, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, no evidence that he ever participated in Epstein's nefarious ways. Right? People want to hold
There are witness statements though.
witness statements that he had a relationship with Epstein. There is no witness statement that says he did
Mm,
X.
yeah,
They were
there
thrown
is.
out. They were thrown out as non-credible. The ones I know that I think I know what you're saying. Well, see, now that's the smirk I was looking for. Here's the deal. You are innocent until proven guilty by a court of law. Period. The end. Black and white.
By a
Flat
court
out.
of law, yes, but not my mind and spirit.
Sure, but
Real
it's
clearly.
like when
Just
people
because a
say
court of law threw it out
well,
doesn't
no,
mean
it's
I'm
like when
throwing it out.
they said that Michael Jackson was a pedophile. Okay?
Yeah.
The key witness, the reason he was acquitted was the key witness in that case, the father of that witness, that young boy, gave
Mhm.
him a drug, the truth serum drug, I forget what it's called, and
Coerced, yeah.
coerced the testimony out of him, right? And that's why he was acquitted. Now, was Michael Jackson weird? Yeah, of course he was weird. Do I think he was a pedophile? No. And he was acquitted. Therefore, he's not. That's just the way the system works. We either accept
Yeah,
that
legally.
yeah, well, no, you either accept that the system is, or you accept that the system isn't, and you work to change it. It's a
Yeah.
Boolean thing, right? Uh, d- it- it- anyway,
I absolutely don't think that the system is. I think the system, I mean, and I think that's been more than proven by recent, like, by the leagues. It's been more than
oh,
proven by them, but by
well,
a
the
lot of
system's
other
always
things.
protected the powerful. That's not an
Well,
American thing,
exactly. Exactly.
right? That's not
No,
an
it's not an
American thing.
American
That's a
thing. Like,
world
it's also the
thing.
Catholic Church. Like,
Well,
it's anyone who's in power.
no,
You can
it's
see it
money
in,
and power. That
yeah,
is the
exactly.
ruling class. There's a reason why they call it the ruling class,
Yeah.
right? Is that while yes, these current revelations have brought down some people, but I mean, Prince Andrew was nobody. He was just part of the ruling class, and that's
But
pe-
this is why you have to keep money and power out of governance, because now, especially like if you have these tech oligarchs, because that's what it is,
yeah.
what they are, they have their hands so heavily in governance that it's like you basically have like a small group of kings and it's their kingdom, right?
But
There's no
that's
democracy there.
literally how it's always been.
Well, not to this extent everywhere,
No,
I feel
oh, I
like.
disagree. No, the only difference now is that we have the power to publicize it. That's the
Well,
only difference. Look at the
I do
history
feel
of Europe. Look at I
mhm,
mean, just the general history of Europe. The top, what is it, 600 families in Europe. The richest 600 families in Europe are the same richest 600 families from 600 years ago. Why
mhm.
is that?
But do they drive policy to the same degree as is being done right now in the US?
Oh,
That's my
absolutely.
question.
I
Like, yes,
absolutely
do they
believe that.
still have money?
No, I
I don't know. I don't
absolutely
think it's
believe
to the
that
same
because
degree.
humans by default. Okay, so I'll give you this is a great Reddit thread. Someone asked on Ask Reddit if someone said to you, one person had to die. You don't know who the person is. It'll be a person anywhere in the world. One person
Mhm,
had to die, but if that person dies, you get $10 million. Would you take it?
mm.
Every single person on that thread that said they wouldn't are liars because you don't know this person. People die every day, and $10 million, that is generational wealth, right?
I wouldn't do it though.
I
Call me
don't.
a liar.
I'm
I
not
wouldn't do
calling
it.
you a liar. I'm going to say that your purity is based on the fact that it has not been proposed.
I mean, that is you don't know that. You
No, I
can't know
don't.
that until
I don't. But
but neither can I. I'll
see
concede
that
that,
that's what I'm
but
saying, right?
I think it also really depends on the value you put on money, for instance. Because like if you have enough means to survive and you're not too pressed about having generational wealth, then it's not really
Okay, but
if
so that
if the
or
wager was something else, it
well
depends on what your incentives are personally,
that's
I
a
guess.
very valid point, and let's talk about that for a second. We are talking. What you just brought up very clearly is you're in my privilege. If
Exactly.
if I shut this laptop today and I never turn on the internet again, I'll be fine for the
You'll be
rest
all
of my
right.
life.
You'll be
I'll
all
be
right.
just fine for the rest of my life. Now, I'm not rich, but I would live just fine, right?
If you have a family member that depends on medically depends on having a certain amount of money and it would take all of your worries away to have this, that's a very different story.
Well, not even just family member. Let's talk about the majority of the society. The majority of society as a whole doesn't make that much money,
No, exactly.
right? I
Yeah, I'm
mean,
taking an
so
extreme case, but it's just to like
yeah, I
illustrate.
mean,
But
I live in an area. Oh, so okay, actually, this is simple. State of Montana, fourth largest state in the nation, by size. The average net worth, and this will get you. The average net worth in Montana is $180,000.
wow,
Right? You're a senior software engineer. You probably make around that within. I'm not asking you to disclose. Just I mean around within that
yep,
elevation per year as a
hmm
salary. Right now, you go to any one of these people and you say, "Hey, look, Joanne, Mark, whoever. Here's the deal. Someone's going to die somewhere in the world, one person, you don't know why, but if you say yes, here's $10 million,
hmm
they're going to take it.
yeah.
There might be an exception. I'm not saying that every single person has that absolute capability as much as I'm saying that most people by far do because they're
I
abstracted
will
from it.
actually say when you said the 180K net worth, I said wow because it was way higher than I expected. You want to know
Really?
why?
That's
Yes,
interesting.
because you want to know why? Because I grew up in a household where we didn't own anything. Like we had no, our net worth was zero essentially. Like
Well, I grew
welfare,
up the same way.
rent, social housing. So it's like to me, it was like 180K on average. That's not too bad actually.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean,
then you were like,
I grew up
that's
the
so
same
little. It's gonna get you.
same way, but to kind of give you an idea, I mean, the average net worth of California is essentially twice that,
Mm,
ish.
mm.
Um, and it's that actually surprises me. I expected it to be a lot higher in California. Um,
I wonder what the median is though.
oh, I don't know. I
Because
have to look it up.
who is pulling out that average? Because there's so many people who don't own homes and don't own
Well, it's
cars.
not just about homes though. Like, for example, I have more. liquid or not. I have more in, say, retirement stocks and bonds and all that than I do in real estate.
Yeah, but how many people in poverty have stocks and
Oh,
bonds and
well, no, that's
retirements?
fair.
Nobody.
But also, well, the great government conspiracy, keep in mind, we don't have a lot of people in poverty.
Huh?
No,
Really?
no, really. Now, let
Maybe I'm because
no,
we
no, no,
also
no,
don't, I
no, no, no,
think,
no.
but
You're
for
not
for me, it
wrong.
was so normal
We
growing up
have
that,
a
like,
lot
how do you
level in
define poverty?
well, okay, so currently, if you're a single person, the federal poverty guidelines, so what the federal government says makes you poverty stricken, means you make less than $16,000 a year.
Okay, but that is a low.
I don't
You
argue with you. In fact, I would argue that as a single individual, it should be more like 35 or 6, anything below that.
and I also think that this is kind of like a cop out because then anyone on welfare makes more than that, so they don't count,
So, uh, no, because we use the
which
poverty
that's the
line.
silly metric,
We
I
use
think.
the poverty line to define whether or not they get the welfare, right? No, if you really want to be, if like you
Okay.
said, the multiple truths. If you really want to get into it, so the United States offers two very distinct possibilities. Hands down, our system allows the opportunity to overcome your past financially. We do. I'm a perfect example of that. Like you, I grew up dirt poor. Lots of Kraft macaroni and cheese, lots of going to grandma's for dinner because we couldn't afford food. I was one of those kids that, mom worked all day. So I went to school and came home and had the whole city to myself until she got home, all that kind of stuff. And I overcame that and I do very well. Um, but on the flip side, I had mentors, I have gifts, I'm intelligent, all
Mm,
those types of things, right?
mhm,
I was in the right place at the right time, right? When I was
mhm,
coming up in the industry, it was right when the internet hit, like
mhm,
right when it went public. On the other hand, we have an environment where companies like Walmart pay you just enough so you can get Medicare so they don't have to pay you more.
mm, mhm,
Medicare and Medicaid, right? And it's not just Walmart. Let me be, it's not just Walmart. It's just that they employ so many people, they're easy to point to. If
mhm,
the government were to raise the poverty line to something that would actually representative, all of a sudden, Walmart would have to, at a minimum, double the wages of their employees.
mhm,
And this is the funny part, and give them health care. Because the
yeah,
one thing the United States does do, and we do it pretty well, and we do it on the federal level and we do it at a state level, is if you're poor, like true poor, we will give you free health care,
yeah.
right? And so what a Walmart will do is say, no, 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 we'll keep them just poor enough to where we don't have to double their wages and we don't have to provide them health care.
Because also if they do have to provide healthcare, is then the coverage also less good than if it was, like, government provided healthcare or, insurance?
Well, you have to define. I mean, that's really subjective because I have private health care and my health care is awesome.
Mm,
Okay, and I wouldn't trade it for state healthcare to save my life, right? There's just no way because I get the best doctors, the best specialists. My doctor for my ankle is the orthopedic surgeon for the Montana State basketball team, right? Grade A, top
mm,
notch, all that stuff. Whereas if I was poor and I was on Medicaid or whatever it is they call it, um, then one, you have to find a doctor that accepts it. Not all doctors accept it because the government
mhm,
sets the rates instead of the private
mhm,
industry setting the rates. On the flip side, you're guaranteed the health care. And an example of this is that someone close to me is about to have a jaw replacement. And that jaw replacement, although is covered by insurance, the surgeon, who's pretty much the best in the nation, doesn't take our insurance,
mm,
right?
Mhm.
And since jaw replacements are so rare, it's one of these weird things where, like, my ankle, I'm in and out same day, right?
Really?
And yeah, in, out,
I would
done.
expect that to be a bit more
No, they put you in a
complicated.
boot. You sit on the couch for 3 weeks, and then you crutch around for another 3 weeks, and then all said and done, you're in some kind of cast boot for about 3
Right.
months. But you're
Oh,
in
but
and
this
out.
is constantly moving around, so
Yeah,
you
this is a
can't.
much bigger thing. But the point
Mhm.
is that if I paid cash, my surgery is like 15 grand.
Yeah.
This individual who's getting a jaw replacement, it's like 250 grand.
Whoa.
Yeah, because it's so rare. I mean, people get
Whoa.
ankle replacement, and don't even get me started on knee replacements. Knee replacements are like nothing, right? They cost nothing because you're in and out, and you stay off your legs for 2 months, and you're good to go. I mean, obviously, physical therapy and all that.
Rehabilitation is a
Yeah,
pretty,
but
yeah,
it's not.
pretty rough.
It's just so. The point is in this situation, the American system of supply and demand is very much in play, right?
Mm.
Is what I
Mhm.
mean. Um, Now, I've actually done research on the Europe side of things, and like Portugal. We before we moved to Montana, we considered moving to Portugal,
Mhm.
and they have a very good system. And one of the reasons is, I'm not 30 anymore. I have to pay attention to what's going to happen in the next 15, 20, 30 years. Um, and the one thing, and I'm sure it depends per country, right? And Canada's in this as well. The one thing about the United States that is truly great in terms of its healthcare is that if you need it, your wait list is 0.
Mm.
You never it's 0. If you need it, it gets done. It doesn't matter if we need to take you to a different state to a very specialty clinic, it gets done. Now, granted, that doesn't take into account insurance and being able to pay for it and all that stuff.
But
But
by needed, do you mean, like, life-threatening?
well, I mean, not necessarily. Well, yes, absolutely life threatening. But the second part of that is, to a certain degree, lifestyle, right? So,
Mm.
my ankle, for example, I went into the doctor and I said, they took imaging. They said, no, you're right. Even with the brace and stuff, you are at a point where your lifestyle has degraded. When do you want the surgery? Not this is when we can do it. It was when do you want it? In fact, my only wait
Mhm.
time for this ankle is that it takes 3 weeks to create the new joint.
Mm.
Right? They
Mm.
take the scans and it takes about 3 weeks to actually create it, test it, make sure it does all its stuff the way it's supposed to. And then literally the next week I can go in and get it done.
How do they make it?
It's 3D printed now.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it used to be
It's like,
like a size, right? Small, medium, large kind of thing. But now they actually
mhm,
take a CAT scan or whatever it is of your ankle, and the joint itself is custom built for your height, for
with,
the
like,
way
one of
you're.
those cool ass, like, industrial
Yeah,
3D
exactly.
printer
In fact,
things. Those are
actually,
so sick.
the company that normally makes them is a company named Stryker. They were in the news recently. Did you hear about this?
No?
Huge company. They're well known for all their prosthetics, and they were recently compromised because of the Iran war
Mm.
and shut them down worldwide. They shut down worldwide so that they could cleanse the system, basically.
In what way were they compromised? Oh, from a, like, a
They were
security
the
vulnerability.
same way everybody is compromised by Microsoft products. And what happened is they got in through, if I remember correctly, they got in somehow through the management interface that allows them to remotely control employee computers and cell phones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you
compromised.
look it up for your own edification. It was a really big deal. I was
Strike?
surprised.
Strike or striker?
Stryker.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
definitely gonna look
that'll
that up.
interest you. It's pretty cool. Well, we're
Oof.
getting a little long here.
Yeah,
I
and
think
it's
you and
nighttime
I,
here.
yeah, I think you and I could have a lot of continuing conversations, especially about politics, healthcare, and all that type of stuff. If you want, happy to continue on another episode. Um, because honestly, I've enjoyed this. And we never
Mhm.
actually even got to the open source stuff that we probably should have.
No, no.
But is there any
Just
closing
yapping
thoughts
on.
that you have?
I'm hungry.
You're hungry?
Sorry,
Fair enough.
I can
Uh,
barely think at this point.
all
It's
right,
just like,
folks, this is another More Than a Refresh with Pauline Vos. We're going to let her go get some dinner. She's coming to us from Europe. Thanks so much for joining us, Pauline.
thank you for the invite once again.